From Tearful Goodbye to Luxe European Escape with a Tycoon, Emily Carter stood in the doorway of the apartment she once called home, watching Jake Thompson pack his belongings into cardboard boxes that seemed to multiply with each passing moment. The autumn rain pelted against the windows of their fifth-floor Manhattan walk-up, creating a melancholic soundtrack to the worst day of her 28 years. She had discovered them together 3 days ago when she returned early from a client meeting to surprise Jake with his favorite takeout from the corner deli. Her best friend, Sarah Martinez, and Jake intertwined on the couch they had picked out together last spring during a sunny Saturday afternoon in Brooklyn. The image burned into her memory like a brand refusing to fade, no matter how many times she closed her eyes or threw herself into work projects at the design agency. Now Jake had the audacity to act like the victim, claiming Emily was too focused on her career, too busy building her portfolio, too absent from their relationship. She wanted to scream at him to throw something, to demand how long this betrayal had been festering beneath the surface of their 3-year relationship. But instead she stood, silent tears streaming down her pale cheeks, as he walked past her one final time, carrying the last box without even a backward glance. The door clicked shut, and Emily collapsed onto the hardwood floor, her body shaking with the kind of grief that comes from losing 2 people simultaneously. Hours passed in a blur of tears and rage, until her phone buzzed with a notification from a travel app she had downloaded months ago during happier times. Without thinking, she opened her laptop and began searching for flights, anywhere far from New York, far from the memories, far from the pain. Paris appeared on her screen, with its romantic streets and artistic heritage calling to her like a siren song promising reinvention. She clicked purchase on a one-way ticket, draining a significant portion of her savings account, but feeling a strange sense of liberation. Rome followed, then Florence, then a spontaneous train pass that would let her wander wherever her broken heart desired. Emily stood up, wiping her face with the back of her hand, and walked to her bedroom, where she pulled out a dusty suitcase from beneath her bed. She threw in clothes without caring about coordination or planning, packing her sketchbook, her favorite pens, and a photograph of her parents who had passed away 5 years earlier. They would have told her to be brave, to seek adventure, to never let anyone dim her light the way Jake and Sarah had tried. As the night deepened over Manhattan, Emily felt something shift inside her chest, a tiny spark of hope beneath the layers of heartbreak. Tomorrow, she would board a plane and leave this nightmare behind, trading the skyline of New York for the ancient beauty of Europe. She would heal herself piece by piece, even if it meant doing it alone in foreign cities where no one knew her name or her story. Emily stumbled off the plane at Charles de Gaulle Airport after 8 hours of restless sleep and turbulent thoughts that mirrored the stormy Atlantic crossing. The morning light filtered through the terminal windows, casting everything in a golden glow that felt almost surreal after the gray darkness of her New York departure. She navigated customs with her rusty high school French and found herself in a taxi speeding toward the Latin Quarter, where she had booked a tiny studio apartment overlooking a cobblestone street. The Parisian air smelled different somehow, carrying hints of fresh bread, coffee, and centuries of history in every molecule. Emily dropped her suitcase in the cramped apartment and immediately left, unable to bear the silence that threatened to bring back memories of Jake. She wandered aimlessly through narrow streets, past bookshops and flower vendors, letting the city wash over her like a healing balm. By afternoon, she found herself at a small cafe along the Seine, its outdoor tables filled with tourists and locals, engaged in animated conversations. She ordered a café crème in broken French and sat at a corner table pulling out her sketchbook, hoping to capture something, anything, to distract from the hollow ache in her chest. But instead of drawing, Emily found herself crying softly, the tears falling onto the blank page, creating watercolor blooms of sadness. She tried to hide her face behind her hand, embarrassed to be falling apart so publicly in this beautiful city. Suddenly, a crisp linen handkerchief appeared in her line of vision, held by a tanned, masculine hand with an expensive watch glinting in the sunlight. She looked up to find a man in his early 30s standing beside her table, his steel gray eyes filled with unexpected concern. He was tall, with dark hair slightly tousled by the river breeze, wearing a perfectly tailored navy suit that screamed wealth and sophistication. The stranger spoke with an American accent, smooth and cultured, asking if she was all right, if she needed anything. Emily wanted to say she was fine to send him away, but something in his genuine expression made her honesty spill out instead. She told him she was spectacularly not all right, that she had just blown her savings to escape a cheating boyfriend and traitorous best friend. The man smiled not with pity, but with understanding, and asked if he could sit down, introducing himself as Alexander Reed from California. Emily wiped her eyes with his handkerchief, catching the monogram AR embroidered in silver thread, and nodded, giving him permission. Alexander ordered 2 glasses of wine despite the early hour, claiming that Paris operated on different rules than the rest of the world. They talked for hours about heartbreak and healing, about taking chances, and the courage it required to run away from pain. He told her he was in Paris for business meetings, but found them tedious compared to the unexpected pleasure of meeting someone so refreshingly real. Emily found herself laughing genuinely for the first time in weeks, as Alexander shared stories about his disastrous attempts to learn French during college. She asked what he did for a living, and he casually mentioned something about tech investments and software development without elaborating. As the sun began to set, painting the Seine in shades of orange and pink, Alexander suggested they continue their conversation over dinner. Emily hesitated, wondering if she was ready to trust anyone, especially a charming stranger who seemed too good to be true. But Alexander simply smiled and promised her the best coq au vin in Paris. No expectations, no pressure, just 2 Americans sharing a meal abroad. She agreed, surprising herself, and they walked along the river toward a restaurant he knew, tucked away in a quiet arrondissement. The restaurant Alexander chose was unlike anything Emily had ever experienced. With ivy-covered walls, crystal chandeliers, and a view of the illuminated Eiffel Tower. The maitre d' greeted Alexander by name, ushering them to a private table on the terrace, where candles flickered in glass hurricanes. Emily felt underdressed in her simple travel clothes, but Alexander insisted she looked perfect, natural, and beautiful, in a way that made her blush. She wondered who exactly this man was that restaurants treated him like royalty, and he wore confidence like a second skin. Over dinner, Alexander revealed more about himself, explaining he had founded a tech company in Silicon Valley that developed artificial intelligence systems. Emily recognized the company name from news articles about billion-dollar acquisitions and revolutionary breakthroughs in machine learning. He was a self-made billionaire who had grown up in foster care, working his way through MIT and building an empire before turning 30. She shared her own story about losing her parents in a car accident, becoming a graphic designer, and pouring everything into relationships that ultimately failed her. Alexander listened intently, asking questions that showed he genuinely cared about understanding her, not just filling conversational silence. He told her she had a gift for expressing emotion through words that most people spent lifetimes trying to articulate. As dessert arrived, a delicate chocolate soufflé that melted on her tongue, Alexander made an unexpected proposal. He had to visit Rome and Florence over the next week for business, and suggested Emily join him on his private jet. She could explore the cities at her own pace, while he handled meetings, and in the evenings, they could discover Italy together. Emily thought he was joking, but his expression remained serious, hopeful, even as he waited for her response. This was insane. She barely knew him, and accepting meant entering a world of luxury that felt like a fantasy, not reality. But something in his eyes reminded her of her own loneliness, a recognition that they were both searching for connection despite their different circumstances. Alexander promised separate accommodations, no pressure, and the freedom to leave whenever she wanted, just a chance to spend time with someone who understood. Emily thought about her empty apartment in Paris, the long, lonely days ahead, and the spark of excitement she felt for the first time since Jake. She looked at the Eiffel Tower sparkling in the distance and made a decision that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. She said yes, watching Alexander's face light up with genuine joy that made her stomach flutter with unexpected butterflies. He raised his wine glass, toasting to new beginnings, unexpected friendships, and the magic of Paris that brought strangers together. Emily had seen private jets in movies, but standing on the tarmac at Le Bourget Airport, looking at Alexander's sleek white aircraft left her speechless. The interior resembled a luxury apartment with cream leather seats, mahogany tables, and a bedroom visible through a partially open door. Alexander greeted her with coffee and pastries, explaining they would fly over the Alps before landing in Rome, where he had reserved suites at a historic palazzo. She settled into a seat that felt like a cloud, watching Paris disappear beneath them as they climbed into brilliant blue skies. During the flight, Alexander worked on his laptop, occasionally glancing up to point out mountain peaks emerging through wisps of cloud. Emily sketched the view, feeling inspired for the first time in months, her pencil capturing the dramatic landscape below. They talked about art and technology, discovering shared passions for innovation and beauty in unexpected places. Rome welcomed them with warm Mediterranean sunshine and the intoxicating chaos of Italian traffic as they drove through ancient streets. The palazzo Alexander had chosen sat near the Spanish Steps, its Renaissance facade hiding opulent rooms decorated with frescoes and antique furniture. Emily's suite was larger than her entire New York apartment, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking terracotta rooftops and distant domes. Alexander had meetings until evening, so Emily spent the afternoon wandering through the Colosseum, imagining gladiators and emperors while sketching architectural details. She felt herself healing with each step through history, her heartbreak shrinking against the backdrop of millennia. That evening, Alexander took her to a hidden trattoria in Trastevere, where they shared carbonara and told stories about childhood dreams. He confessed he had always wanted to be an astronaut until he discovered coding and found a different way to reach for the stars. Emily revealed her secret ambition to illustrate children's books, but fear of failure had kept her locked in corporate design work. Alexander challenged her to start that very night, promising to be her first investor if she ever published. As they walked along the Tiber River, Alexander reached for her hand tentatively, and Emily surprised herself by not pulling away. His touch felt electric, sending shivers up her arm that had nothing to do with the cool evening breeze. But their moments shattered when a stunning brunette in a designer dress appeared, blocking their path with fury blazing in her dark eyes. The woman was Victoria Ashford Alexander's ex-girlfriend, who launched into a heated tirade about being abandoned and replaced. She accused Emily of being another naive conquest, warning her that Alexander collected broken hearts like other men collected cars. Alexander tried to calm Victoria, explaining they had ended months ago, but she grabbed Emily's arm with perfectly manicured nails. Emily pulled free, feeling old insecurities surge back, wondering if Victoria was right, if she was just another distraction for a bored billionaire. She walked away quickly, ignoring Alexander calling her name, needing space to process the ugly confrontation. She found herself at the Trevi Fountain, surrounded by tourists, tossing coins, making wishes, while she questioned every decision since Paris. Alexander found her an hour later, sitting quietly with tears tracking down her face. He sat beside her, not touching, just present, and began explaining his relationship with Victoria had been toxic, built on mutual ambition, not genuine affection. He admitted he had a past filled with mistakes and people who wanted his money, not his heart. But meeting Emily had reminded him what real connection felt like. The kind based on honesty, vulnerability, and seeing beyond surface appearances. Emily confessed her fear of being hurt again, of opening her heart, only to discover another betrayal hiding beneath charm. Alexander took her hand gently and promised he would never lie to her, that if she wanted to leave, he would arrange her flight home immediately. She saw sincerity there mixed with hope, and realized running away again would mean losing something potentially extraordinary. She squeezed his hand and suggested they take things slowly, one day at a time, without expectations beyond honest companionship. Alexander agreed, and they threw coins into the fountain together, wishing for courage to trust despite past wounds. Part 5. The next morning, Alexander surprised Emily with a spontaneous trip to Tuscany, flying by helicopter over rolling hills covered in vineyards and cypress trees. They landed at a private villa he owned, nestled among olive groves, with views stretching to medieval hill towns in the distance. The villa was a restored farmhouse with stone walls, wooden beams, and a pool overlooking valleys painted in shades of green and gold. Alexander had arranged for them to spend 3 days there, away from business pressures and prying eyes, just two people exploring possibilities. They made pasta by hand with help from Maria the housekeeper, who taught them traditional Tuscan recipes passed down through generations. Emily found herself relaxing completely, laughing at their flour-covered faces and the misshapen ravioli that somehow tasted perfect anyway. They walked through vineyards at sunset, Alexander pointing out constellations, while Emily shared memories of stargazing with her late parents. He listened with genuine interest, asking questions that honored her grief while celebrating the love her parents had given her. Each day brought new revelations as they shed layers of protection built from past hurts. Alexander revealed the loneliness of his success, how wealth had attracted opportunists while genuine connections became increasingly rare. Emily shared her pattern of losing herself in relationships, giving everything until nothing remained of her own dreams and identity. They recognized similar wounds in each other, the fear of vulnerability that kept them isolated despite craving authentic intimacy. On their final evening in Tuscany, they sat by the pool under stars that seemed close enough to touch. Alexander confessed he was falling for her, that meeting her felt like fate intervening when he had almost given up on finding real love. Emily admitted she felt the same, despite her terror that this magical interlude would dissolve like morning mist. He cupped her face in his hands and kissed her softly, a kiss that tasted of promise and new beginnings. She kissed him back, feeling walls crumble as desire and trust intertwined in ways she had never experienced. But their moment was interrupted by Alexander's phone buzzing insistently with calls from his business partner in California. He apologized, explaining a crisis with their company's new product launch required his immediate attention and presence. Emily's heart sank, wondering if reality was already intruding on their fragile bubble of happiness. Alexander had to return to Silicon Valley within 48 hours, but wanted Emily to come with him to continue what they had started. She hesitated, knowing that entering his real world meant facing the full scope of his life, including jealous exes demanding careers and intense public scrutiny. He promised her own space-time to pursue her illustration dreams, and no pressure beyond seeing where their connection might lead. Emily thought about her empty New York apartment, her failed relationship, and the woman she had been just weeks ago, broken and lost. Then she thought about the woman she was becoming, brave enough to take risks and believe in possibility again. She realized love required courage, not certainty, and that protecting her heart meant missing opportunities for genuine happiness. Emily told Alexander she would come to California with him, but needed to maintain her independence and career aspirations. He agreed enthusiastically, already planning a studio space where she could work on her children's book illustrations. They held each other under the Tuscan stars, knowing their journey together was just beginning, filled with unknown challenges and limitless potential. As dawn broke over the hills, Emily felt grateful for the tearful goodbye that had brought her to Europe and the unexpected escape that had healed her shattered heart. She understood now that sometimes the worst heartbreaks lead to the greatest adventures, and that true love appears when you stop searching and start living. Alexander kissed her forehead and promised to spend every day proving he was worth the risk she was taking. Emily believed him, ready to embrace this luxurious, unpredictable new chapter with a tycoon who had swept her off her feet and shown her she deserved extraordinary love.